It's the morning time. Hello. I want to talk about the conscience. The conscience. The conscience. The conscience. I grew up in a church called the Unification Church. Nobody knows about it. I'm not going to explain it. Anyway, we had a religious text in that church called the Divine Principle. And in the Divine Principle, the man who wrote it, well, he didn't actually write it, but he said it. Someone else wrote it, but basically he wrote it. Says that there is a conscience. Every human being has a conscience. That God gave us a conscience. And I've always felt that that is true from my own experience, because when I do things, I have this like push and pull, like, is this the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? And I found when I do some act, something that's, important, something that's major, in the process of doing it, as I take a step forward, there are feelings associated with, the movements that I make. And ever since I found the divine truth and the teachings of the divine truth and Jesus and Mary, I have found, and it resonates with me, that there is an association with not only your physical action, but also kind of your mental or, emotional action. That is the process of the decision making itself. There is an association with that. And I've never been able to understand that, but that, looking back, definitely rings true for me. So I don't know, it could be the simplest thing. Like for me, eating has always been a major addiction. So when I go to for some reason, I'm thinking about going to a Subway restaurant. I remember when Subway restaurants were just, coming out, and next to the Magic the Gathering shop that I would go to, there was a Subway station in my hometown. A Subway restaurant. And, for me, it was a question of, do I want to buy a foot long or a 6-inch? If I eat a foot long, that's a lot for like a 12-year-old, but I love eating a lot. And should I put more mayonnaise on it? And I'm also spending my mom's money, so maybe I shouldn't spend that much. And even like buying Magic the Gathering cards, should I be buying this? Is this good for me? Is this a good thing? There's all these kinds of decisions that you make all the time. And I don't know if these, small decisions are really good examples, because there's also major ones. But I think they are pretty meaningful, because the small decisions you make can roll down the hill and snowball into larger decisions. Um, I'd like to put that more eloquently. I'm thinking of a quote, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to bastardize the quote, so I'm not going to even say it. Something about a diamond's edge, like your decision, can be as small as a diamond's edge, and it changes your whole life. Anyway, so the reason why I want to talk about the conscience is that I've always felt, in a world of people who have, to me, very strange beliefs. And I don't want to judge people, but like, to me, growing up, I've always talked to people, and in my conversations with them, like, I say, I ask, do you believe in God? How do you feel about God? Like for me, it's like God's already a fact. Especially when I was young, it was like, going out in the world and talking to people, God was a preliminary fact. And I soon found out that that wasn't the case for many people. People would hem and haw, and people would say, and then when I was like in the late teens, some of my friends came out as atheists. And I was like, what? How can you be an atheist? And atheism was a thing. And I learned that there was, a small number of atheists in the world. And, even though America was largely God believing, it seemed like atheism and agnosticism was on the rise. And then I became an agnostic. But when I was young, in my conversations with people, I was surprised at some of the beliefs that people had. Um, I believe that perfection is possible. I believe that there's an ideal world out there, that there's an ideal situation that we could make for ourselves. Um, the religious term would be, a kingdom of heaven. Um, a non-religious term would be a utopia. But I feel like that doesn't do the idea justice, because that's like, if that term feels like, something that's not possible but you want to be possible. I've always felt that the kingdom of heaven was definitely possible, and we could create it, we could make it, we could find it, we could live there. And of course, it's not necessarily a physical place. And growing up, I wasn't sure exactly how to think of what the kingdom of heaven would be like, but I surely loved dreaming about it. I loved, dreaming about what it could be like, dreaming about people that loved each other, dreaming about people that would, greet each other on the street and really mean it and feel, happy to see their friend. Um, Singing and dancing everywhere, and, having, uh, what's the word? Communication with the animals, having deliberation with the animals, like not having animals be afraid of you, but like birds, landing on your shoulders and, running through the fields on, besides a bear or something. Um, anyway, I love to think about what the kingdom of heaven is like, but I found out that people actually, and who God was is the other thing I'd like to talk about with people. But I found that people did not have as utopian a mindset as I did, and they had a very bleak outlook on the world, and that always shocked me. And people, there's one thing that people say, which is like, if only that were the case, like it would be nice, you know, things like that. It would be nice if that was possible, but the way that people are, or something, as though, it's, you have to deal with the reality of human nature or something. And to me, is like, yes, there is a reality to human nature, but why can't we pull together and, you know, uh, rally our defenses or whatever to, attain something better together? And I guess the central thing that I want to say is that people have this deep seated belief that human beings cannot change, that there's something uniquely wrong with human beings. And it's like a dark and light belief system, that there's always a dark side to every person, and that dark side is a permanent reality. Uh, you can't undo that. That's not necessarily the cause of it, caused by any fall or choice that we made. It's just a part of us. And I don't know how people came to that conclusion, but I'm sure, the traumas that people experience in their life, I would say at this point that it's fairly clear that, trauma and struggle and suffering that people have gone through have uh, made them accept and adopt the belief that there's just a dark side to every person. And to me, it's always been like, I mean, there's a dark side, but it's not permanent. You can change it, you can explore it, and you can, I don't know if you would say remove it, but, or release it, but you could purge it. I'm very uneloquent this morning. I'm sorry, but I find, my own uneloquence is up against my desire to talk about this, which is really important to me. But yeah, this dark side I've always felt, even though, it is a reality, the evils of human nature. I mean, I don't want to say the evils of human nature, but the part of ourselves that is not good, that is evil, that is not godly. We can remove that part of ourselves. We could talk about it, and we could discuss it, and we can get rid of it. Um, I've always really wondered, and now maybe I'm going to go on another tangent, but like what that what that darkness is and why it's there. And I used to believe that it had something to do with Satan, and now I'm made to understand that there is no Satan, but it's all our decision. That's another tangent. I don't want to go there, but the belief that I had that exploded on the cliff of the belief of other people was that we have a conscience. Because I knew that I had a conscience, because I could feel my conscience working. And I always thought that my conscience was this inbuilt thing that God had put there. Um, and I could feel it working. I'm being redundant. But like, I don't know if I've ever gotten that far with people to where, I would discuss with them, what do you think about this and that and the way the world is and, how we can change. And then they would say, well, people are just a certain way at the end of the day. And they, you know, people have this dark side and such. And, and I've never really got far enough to say, well, we all at the end of the day know in ourselves what's right. I think maybe once or twice in my conversations with people, I've been able to get that far, but that's something I've always believed. And so the idea of the conscience, that we all have it, even if we ignore it to a large extent, has always been, you know, a rooted concept in me. Um, and now I understand, now I'm kind of, adopting a new perspective on the conscience, where instead of it being this like moral compass uh, inside of ourselves, it is actually our like a connection that we have to God, because Jesus and Mary are talking about how the conscience, they're defining the conscience, and I don't know if it's appropriate to do that, but I mean, why not? Because words do change over time, and maybe in 100 years the conscience will mean something else. But they call it a direct connection to God. In other words, God is like speaking to you. So that's kind of cool, because it doesn't feel in today's society that we have any real connections to God, because well, it feels more like we're disconnected, and no one knows the way to reconnect. But this idea that we have this constant connection with God that we can always access is interesting. So maybe in those moments that I went to get a little bit more mayonnaise than I should have on my Subway sandwich, I probably shouldn't laugh about it. I don't know. Um, and I felt weird about it. Maybe that was God saying, maybe that's a little bit too much mayonnaise. I don't know. Is this worth it to post up? Did I waste 13 minutes and 54 seconds of your time? 14 minutes at the end of this. I'll just end it here. I hope you're doing well. Bye.